The studio was too quiet. Millions were watching from every corner of the globe. TVs, phones, laptops, all tuned in to the most talked-about broadcast of the year. Red and blue lights blinked around the sleek glass walls of the International News Studio. A giant LED screen behind the host flickered with two names, Donald Trump and Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This wasn't a debate. This was war, with words. The host cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Trump, you may begin." Trump leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Let me be clear," he said. "This man sitting across from me is playing with fire. He's destabilizing international order. He's pushing Africa into chaos." Gasps echoed across social media. The word fire began trending on Twitter in 10 languages. Cameras cut to Ibrahim Traoré, calm, unbothered, almost too still. He waited. Trump jabbed his finger across the table. "You're a threat to democracy, and we will respond." Silence. Then Traoré spoke, soft, but powerful. "I'm not playing with fire. I'm fighting for my people." The host froze. A camera assistant dropped her headset. The world was no longer watching a conversation. It was watching a collision. Back home in Ouagadougou, a little boy pressed his forehead to the TV screen. His mother was crying silently in the kitchen. "Is Baba Traoré going to be okay?" the boy whispered. In Washington, a CNN producer slammed her notepad on the table. "Who let this air live?" she barked. But Traoré didn't flinch. "Your country," he said to Trump, "has sent weapons, sent drones, and called it aid. But you don't know what it means to walk barefoot through burned villages." Trump stared. The studio's air tightened. "Have you ever buried a child with your own hands?" Traoré asked. "I have." There it was. A deep, raw silence. Viewers watching on YouTube stopped breathing. In Niger, Senegal, Nigeria, people leaned closer to their screens. Even Trump blinked. "No, you don't fight for peace," Traoré continued. "You fight for control. I fight for dignity." Suddenly the screen behind them flashed. Live social feed flooding. "He speaks for all of us. This man is Africa's lion. I've never cried like this watching TV." The host tried to cut to commercial, but viewers screamed online, "Don't stop the broadcast." Something was happening. This wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. As the cameras rolled, Trump straightened his red tie and laughed bitterly. "Oh, please, you talk like some holy rebel. But I've seen your country's reports. Poverty, coups, militants. You're no saint, Captain. You're a walking mess," the audience murmured. The host shifted in his seat. Then Traoré turned slowly to the moderator. "Can I play something?" he asked. A brief pause, then a nod. Traoré pulled a small flash drive from his breast pocket and handed it to a technician. "Play the file marked Children. No edits." Seconds later, the screen behind them flickered. Footage began. A burned schoolhouse, an empty chalkboard, a young girl, no older than 6, crying next to her brother's lifeless body, a mother shouting through tears, "They came at night. They came while we prayed." The audience gasped. Then a title appeared on screen. "This was funded by foreign weapons." Trump's face paled. Traoré didn't blink. "Before you lecture me about peace," he said, "watch the fires your weapons built." A woman in the studio began to sob. Somewhere, a soldier watching on his phone clenched his fist. The moderator whispered into his mic, "What did we just air?" As the heartbreaking footage faded from the studio screen, even the boldest panelists fell silent. Then, a retired U.S. general, brought in as a neutral analyst, finally spoke. His voice cracked. I was part of the team that greenlit that arms deal," he confessed. "I thought we were helping. I swear to God, I thought we were helping." He took off his glasses and looked straight at Traoré. "I didn't know they used our weapons to burn schools." Trump leaned back, fuming, arms crossed. He muttered something off mic, something that wasn't picked up clearly. But lip readers online later claimed he said, "We weren't supposed to show that." The studio was shaken. Traore remained still. "I am not your enemy," he said, turning to the general. "But I won't let my people be collateral damage for your policies." Suddenly, the live stream chat exploded. "Why isn't the world protecting Africa? He's so calm, so real. Traore is doing what our leaders won't." In a small village outside Kaya, a grandmother whispered to her radio, "God protect him. He is our last hope." Outside, thunder rolled in the sky. Inside, history was being rewritten. The camera panned across the panel, experts frozen, journalists unsure what to say. Then someone unexpected stood up. It was Dr. Lydia Mensah, a Ghanaian human rights lawyer who had been invited as a silent observer. She removed her mic and asked, "May I speak?" The host nodded, stunned. She walked forward, not to Trump, but to Traore. "I buried my brother last year," she began. "He was a teacher in northern Burkina Faso. He died protecting school children from a militia raid, funded by foreign groups hiding behind aid money." She paused, choking back tears. "I was told to stay silent, to not embarrass our allies. But after tonight, I don't care." She turned to the cameras. "Captain Traoré is not perfect, but tonight, he spoke the truth. And sometimes truth is the most dangerous weapon in the room." Trump looked visibly uncomfortable. Across Africa, millions of viewers held their breath. Lydia placed her hand on Traoré's shoulder, looked him in the eye and whispered, "They don't fear your weapons. They fear your voice." Social media lit up with fire emojis, crying gifs, and one repeated hashtag, "Stand with Traoré." The war wasn't on the battlefield anymore. It was on screen, and it was spiritual. Back in the control room, a nervous producer leaned toward the host. "We're running long. Should we cut it?" The host looked toward the stage, at Traoré, at Trump, at Lydia, and shook his head. "No. Let the world feel this." The scene shifted again. Traoré turned toward the global audience, his voice lower now, like a father reading a bedtime story no child should ever hear. "I once met a boy in Djibo," he began. "He had no shoes, his village had no water, but he walked every day, 5 miles, to attend a school with broken chalkboards and no roof." Trump rolled his eyes. "That boy," Traoré said softly, "saluted me. I asked him why. He said, 'Because they say you're the one who made the food come back.'" He looked down for a moment, then up again. That salute meant more than any vote, more than any speech. "That's why I fight." The camera zoomed in. His eyes glistened, but no tears fell. In the YouTube live chat, viewers began posting, "I'm literally crying. This is the first time a leader made me feel something. Don't let him fall. We need to protect him." A quiet revolution was building, one tear at a time. The studio lights dimmed for a moment. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. In Burkina Faso, families gathered around flickering radios and cracked phones waiting for updates. Inside the studio, the tension was unbearable. Trump's jaw tightened. His usual bluster seemed muted. The panelists exchanged nervous glances. Traoré's calm face was a sharp contrast. He looked directly into the camera. "I fight not because I want war. I fight because peace has never been given to us freely." He paused. "For decades, we begged for fairness, for justice, for dignity. We got silence and bullets." His voice cracked for the first time, just slightly, but enough to make millions of hearts break. Suddenly, a message popped on screen from a young girl in Ouagadougou. "My father was taken from us last year. I don't want anyone else to lose their home." Traoré's eyes glistened. The The studio was silent. No one moved. The world was listening, truly listening. Trump's face hardened. "This is what I mean by playing with fire," he said. "You threaten the world's balance. You push your people into chaos. And you expect us to watch quietly." The studio erupted in whispers. Traore shook his head slowly. "No, Mr. Trump. I'm not the fire. I'm the smoke you ignored. The smoke of burning homes, broken promises, and forgotten children." The moderator pressed on. "Captain, what do you say to those who call you reckless?" Traore's reply was like a thunderclap. "I say, look in the eyes of every child who sleeps hungry tonight. Reckless? No. I'm their voice, the voice of hope, even in the darkest times." Social media exploded again. Hashtags like Sajjar's Voice of Hope and Ibrahim Speaks flooded timelines worldwide. Meanwhile, in a small refugee camp near the Mali border, a mother held her son tight. She watched the broadcast on a cracked tablet, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Finally, she whispered, "Someone speaks for us." The broadcast cut to commercial, but the world wasn't done. Inside the control room, producers scrambled to handle the viral storm. Messages poured in, some from diplomats, some from ordinary people who'd never followed politics before. In Washington, newsrooms buzzed. The phrase, "fighting for my people," became the new battle cry, replayed endlessly. Back in Ouagadougou, Traore's phone rang nonstop. Calls from neighbors, friends, even strangers thanking him for his courage. But not everyone was pleased. A confidential message leaked that night. A warning from powerful forces, warning Traore to back down. Yet when asked about it, Traore smiled quietly and said, "I'm not afraid of threats. My people's lives are worth more than fear." The studio lights dimmed again. The world was no longer just watching. It was waiting. The studio went dark for a moment, but the storm was only beginning. Backstage, Captain Ibrahim Traoré received a confidential message, a warning disguised as a plea. Powerful voices told him to step down, to stop provoking the global powers. He read the words quietly, then folded the paper with calm determination. His closest advisor asked, "Are you worried?" Traoré shook his head. "Fear doesn't protect our children. Action does." Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Washington, top officials were scrambling. The broadcast was causing waves not just on screens, but in rooms of power. They feared the ripple effect. News leaked that sanctions were being drafted against Traoré's government. But in Ouagadougou, people held their breath, united behind a leader who refused to be silenced. A mother in a refugee camp whispered to her child, "He fights for us. That's why we survive." Outside, the winds began to howl. The world was watching, but no one yet knew what was coming next. In the capital city, life moved in quiet resistance. Schools reopened slowly, markets buzzed with cautious hope, and children laughed again. Traoré walked among his people, not as a distant leader, but as one of them. He visited a small clinic where a nurse recounted how aid meant for medicine had been delayed by sanctions. "I tell her," Traoré said later, "we will fight with every breath to make sure no one dies because of politics." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise. In the studio, Trump's words echoed still, but Traoré's calm strength was reshaping the story. He wasn't just a leader in a suit, he was the pulse of a people tired of waiting. And the world began to listen, not to power, but to hope. Social media exploded with videos of ordinary Africans sharing the hashtag, "Fighting for my people." From bustling streets of Lagos to remote villages in Burkina Faso, people posted messages of solidarity. One video showed a young man handing a loaf of bread to an elder. Another showed children planting trees in a dusty schoolyard. The movement was simple but powerful. Back in the studio, the host struggled to contain the energy. Trump's warning felt smaller by the minute. Traoré's message had become a beacon. In Washington, some politicians whispered that this could not be ignored. For the first time, millions believed change was possible. And Traoré, standing firm on camera, whispered to himself, "For my people, I will burn brighter than any fire they try to start." The world was no longer just watching history, it was living it. Late at night, under the dim light of a single bulb, Traoré opened an envelope handed to him by a young soldier. Inside was a letter from a father on the front lines, his words raw and desperate. "Captain, my children sleep hungry while I fight in the cold. They ask me why their father is away. I tell them it's to build a safer tomorrow. But some nights, I wonder if that tomorrow will come." Traoré read the letter slowly, feeling the weight of every word. He thought about his own family, his people scattered across villages still scarred by violence. He folded the letter carefully and stood before his advisors. "We fight not for power," he said, "but so that no father's children grow up in fear." The letter became a symbol, a voice for those who could not speak. Across Burkina Faso, many shared similar stories. Traoré's fight was no longer political, it was deeply personal. A powerful silence had settled over the nation. In humble homes, grandmothers clutched old photographs of lost loved ones. Children whispered prayers for peace. In the studio, Traoré's calm eyes reflected a deep sorrow, a sadness only those who have seen war understand. "I don't wish to be a hero," he said quietly. "I only wish for my people to live without fear." His voice broke for a moment. A tear slid down his cheek. Millions watching felt the weight of that moment. No fancy speeches, no empty promises. Just a man carrying the pain of a nation. In the streets of Ouagadougou, candles were lit. People prayed not for battle, but for hope. The world was witnessing not a politician, but a guardian of dreams. Storm clouds gathered over the capital as news of sanctions spread like wildfire. The global powers tightened their grip, hoping to silence Traoré's message. But the people stood firm. From dusty villages to bustling cities, voices rose in unison. "We stand with you," they said. In the studio, Traoré faced another round of sharp questions. "Do you fear the consequences of defying the world?" the host asked. Traoré smiled softly. "Fear is a luxury I cannot afford. When you fight for your people, you become their shield." The words rippled through the broadcast like thunder. In every heart touched by his courage, a flame was kindled. The battle was far from over, but hope had found a home. The night was unusually quiet in Ouagadougou. Streets that were once noisy with children playing were now still. Families gathered close, holding hands, praying for strength. Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in his modest office, staring at the framed photo of his late father. His eyes were tired but unwavering. Tomorrow the world would decide his fate. Sanctions loomed, whispers of invasion circled, and enemies plotted behind closed doors. Yet, Traoré whispered to himself, "I do not fight for power or glory. I fight so my people may dream freely." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying dust across the city. A single candle flickered on his desk, barely lighting the room. But inside, the flame of hope burned brighter than ever. The morning broke with an uneasy calm. Traoré stepped onto the balcony, looking out over his city. Thousands had gathered below, young and old, rich and poor, faces full of hope and fear. They were waiting. The global news buzzed with anticipation. At the high-tech studio halfway across the world, Trump prepared for a final statement, eyes cold and determined. But Traoré's voice echoed across the airwaves, clear and strong. "I stand for my people, for the children who deserve schools, For mothers who deserve peace, I will not be silenced. Tears streamed down faces in living rooms from Washington to Ouagadougou. The world wasn't just watching anymore. It was feeling every heartbeat of a nation's courage. As the day faded, a message lit up every screen. Traoré's words had shattered silence and fear. In a final, unforgettable moment, he repeated softly, but with unshakable conviction, "Because I'm fighting for my people." The studio was silent. The world was moved. Even those who once doubted saw the truth. And in that moment, something beautiful happened. Hope won. Tears flowed freely worldwide, not for defeat, but for a leader who dared to stand tall. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart as it did mine, please hit like, subscribe, and share. Your comments mean the world. Tell me what moved you the most, or share your thoughts on Captain Ibrahim Traoré's courage. Let's keep the conversation alive, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching. Stay strong. Stay hopeful.